And do we know when this vote is happening with the same-sex legislation? What is the latest update on this?
They're going to the cloture vote today, basically to start the arguments this afternoon. I don't think it's happened.
Reportedly, there's a couple of Republicans who are on board with codifying essentially what was found in the Obergefell case at the Supreme Court, that there is a right for same-sex marriage in this country. My other understanding is that they are going to also codify in statute loving, which was a case that said that people have a right to marry regardless of what race each person is in that union.
A thing that needed to be said.
A thing that needed to be said, because there was many of states in the country where they had anti-miscegenation laws, and you could not marry, if you were a black person, you could not marry a white person. If you were a white person, you could not marry a black person, et cetera, et cetera. Why is it important to codify these things? You could have asked that question about abortion 10 years ago. Why would it be important to do that? At the time, people were like, it's important, but it's not that important. Because the Supreme Court has already said it's a right, constitutional right that Americans have. Here's Ben Shapiro trying to discipline Republican senators. This guy's been all over the place. Because wasn't he just also complaining about Republicans spent too much time on the culture war? And now he's back to the culture war. Who knows?
Just kind of blaming Trump, too.
He's all over the place here. But I don't know how if he still talks to his buddy Dave Rubin. But here we go.
So with the Democrats taking the Senate, they're now going to move ahead with a vote on a gay marriage bill. Now, what is the purpose of a gay marriage bill? There is no purpose to a gay marriage bill. Obergefell has already been ruled upon. And a simple gay marriage bill is not even a constitutional amendment. So it's not even above and beyond the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruling is still the law.
Like I said, Roe v. Wade, Supreme Court ruling. Casey, Supreme Court ruling. Why would you need to codify it in federal statute? Because federal statute supersedes any state laws that would inhibit the right to do that. I don't know. Why do you need a Voting Rights Act? He knows exactly why you would do this. Put aside the politics associated with it. The reason is so that gay people can get married, regardless of what happens with the Supreme Court in the future. And they have signaled that they're interested in looking at this, without a doubt. But even if they didn't, remember, every single one of the people on the Supreme Court who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade had said publicly it is settled law.
Yeah, most people have heard about Roe v. Wade and not these other, loving.
Exactly.
A simple gay marriage bill is not even a constitutional amendment. So it's not even above and beyond the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruling is still the law. If the Supreme Court ruling were overturned, a quick majority in the Senate could quickly overturn this law. Okay, but the idea here is that you're going to get all the Republicans on record as to whether...
I don't know what a quick majority in the Senate is. I mean, he's really worried about this, because the thing that the Pope of the Jews here doesn't understand, or does understand, is the vast majority of Americans, and this is a number that is going up, not down, in terms of support, have absolutely no problem. They are not as fixated on other people's sexuality as this guy is. And he wants to impose his religious fundamentalist values on the rest of the country. That's called a theocracy. He's called a theocrat. His beliefs that have been divined by God, according to him, say that you can't have gay marriage. So the fact is he also knows that there is no quick majority in the Senate that's going to vote against gay marriage. You're going to get Republicans who are going to vote for this. And voting to ban gay marriage is even much harder to get them if they're willing to support it in the first place. And so he knows that this is going to make it the law of the land and insulate it from the fundamentalists that are on the Supreme Court, frankly. Good.
They support or do not support same-sex marriage. Now, let me just put this out there for the Republican senators. If you vote in favor of the idea that society has an obligation to recognize male-male or female-female dyads in the same way that society has an obligation to recognize male-female, you should not be in the Republican Party. You shouldn't. Okay, the reason I say this is not because I wish to shrink the size of the Republican Party. Because if the fundamental basis of human society is male-female child, and you think that by passing a law you can change that reality, you do not belong in government. This is a very simple proposition. Men and men are not the same as a man and a woman who are capable of becoming one flesh and producing a child. This is not difficult stuff. Many Republicans will be tempted
Pause
to
it
vote
for
for
one
this.
second. First of all, they can become one flesh. They can't produce a child. And he's doing a little switcheroo here, incidentally. He's saying that the male-female dyad...
Is there a WAP in the dyad?
The male-female dyad, which means basically just coupling, is the fundamental basis of human society. And we know, based upon the idea of like in vitro fertilization and surrogacy and this and that, that that's not really the case anymore. But even if it were, that's a different question as to whether the state is going to recognize a union between two people that has over 1,000 special benefits or rights that people who can't enter into this state-created union can enjoy. That's the question here.
Yeah, it's a little trick. Like they'll cite all these things that are supposedly immutable, but not like state enforced, and then say the state should come back and reinforce these things.
Right, right. He wants to say that it's immutable, that only a man and a woman can have a child. That you need, when in fact, really what you need is stuff from a man, stuff from a woman to have a child.
And not
but even
every
if
man and woman can have.
And not every man and woman have that. But let's just stipulate, okay, the future of human civilization is contingent upon the existence of men and women and enough men and enough women who can produce that stuff that you need to propagate the species. But that has nothing to do with marriage.
Is Dave Rubin out of the Republican Party now?
No, I suspect he's still in there. That's another question. But you don't need that for marriage. Marriage is a choice that society makes, that we're going to bestow certain benefits onto these people. We're going to license the ability to marry people. You don't need a license to procreate, folks. You do need a license if you're going to join two people together. Where does that license come from? The license comes from the state. You literally get a marriage license. And it comes with certain benefits and privileges and rights that are associated with each other and taxes and whatever it is. And he's hiding the ball here because he doesn't care because he's a theocrat. And for him, the license is issued by God. His God, incidentally.
To avoid the conflict, so that people don't yell at them. Oh my gosh, you're not respecting love is love. Now, first of all, the love is love argument was always bullcrap. The left doesn't even believe love is love. The left has its own restrictions on what it believes is acceptable, at least for now. The left does not actually believe that all sexual relationships are perfectly equivalent. They would not presumably be in favor of brother-brother marriage. They'd not be in favor of father-daughter marriage, I would assume, for now. They're not in favor of adult-child marriage, for now. Okay, but they don't even believe that quote-unquote love is love. What they actually believe is that marriage should be redefined to mean whatever they believe it ought to mean, and that they get to socially engineer society along the lines of their utopian visions in which individual sexual preference is the core of human identity, as opposed to, actual biological reality in which the most important thing that human beings do is procreate, have babies, and then live inside those relationships, bring up those kids. Now, the Republicans can pretend along with this in order to avoid controversy, but it just shows how gutless they are if they do.
All right, we don't need to hear any more of this. I mean, the idea that, like, you know, that it also shows you, like, what kind of sex pests these fundamentalists are. That human existence, or I should say, human society, boils down to sexual issues, whatever he's calling them. That there's nothing else. That and love is just a bumper sticker. Bottom line is, like, these people can get married and it doesn't harm society whatsoever. The social engineering that is going on. Do you know what the difference between today's society in terms of the social engineering and society in 2012? Maybe there's less single gay people.
I mean, that's what the way he brings in incest and pedophilia. Like, for now, they're not against that. They're against that stuff for now, because you can't just argue against the. It's harder to argue that we can't just let gay people marry.
Right, and the problem that they have with their argument too is that, you know, his argument is like there's no limiting principle. Once you change it from man versus, you know, man and woman, there's no limiting principle. Well, no, that's not true. I mean, there wasn't a limiting principle with man and woman, it turns out, either. Two people who want to get married, who want, in other words, to get the privileges that the state offers for people who have entered into a contract between each other to create a family. The limiting principle is it's got to be two people. And they can't be closely related. And they both have to be over a certain age. I mean, let's be honest, folks. If we're talking about traditional marriage is guy is 10, 15, 20 years older than the teenager that he has approached the teenager's father as some type of arrangement that involves maybe the payment of goats and chickens. That's a traditional marriage. A traditional marriage is where the much younger woman, more often than not, maybe girl, is property of the man. That's the traditional marriage. How do you justify the age of consent if you think that you cannot mess with traditional marriage? I got news for you. There was no age of consent in the Bible.
Yeah.
That didn't exist. That is just another layer of the state saying this is what we have decided is necessary to maintain order of some form in this, you know, within our society. And at one point, society realizes, like, okay, we also have to be fair, and it doesn't in any way impede the functioning of society to allow two people who want to get married, regardless of their gender or sex.
Well, what you just said about the idea of traditional marriage, Sam, you'll recall, is one of per those leaks from some of Matt Walsh's old podcast, was one of his foundational principles is that, you know, there was all this outrage over marrying 16-year-old, you know, of age man marrying a 16-year-old, even though that was, you know, that was tradition.
That's traditional marriage.
That's what, you know, that's how things worked before. That's how things were. That was commonplace, and now it's not.
Yep.
So
I mean,
he wants to go back to that.
Of course. Because they're both theocrats.
Yeah. Oh,
Genuinely, yeah.
Genuine theocrats.
It's not that they're accidentally like
They're not
getting back
stumbling
to
onto
that.
this stuff.
They're like, you know, trying to float a trial balloon to bring that back.
Of course.